successful ebook publishing. He is going to be speaking on, well, if you've got the announcement, I don't want to bore you with that, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about David. David is the managing partner of ebook publishing and a digital media consultant and media digital consulting firm, Cellbox, and the author of successful ebook publishing. He's a frequent speaker for the independent writers of Southern California and publishers and writers of San Diego. He's a regular contributor to the Independent Book Publishers Association's Independent Magazine. Before Cellbox, David worked at the LA-based Times Mirror in information technology and business development. He was a co-founder of Times Mirror Multimedia and later co-founder and served as the COO of a venture capital-backed sports team web services company, the predecessor of today's CBS College Sports Network. So I think he's very well suited to speak to us. Please welcome David Wogahn.
It was long ago that we had the idea that we would do a business for, went to athletic departments, and we said, you guys should have your own websites. And they said, well, we have an engineering department. We'll just do that, through them. We don't need to have your help with websites. We said, well, if you want to commercialize them, then that's what we're really going to be good at. So we went around and reserved names like USCTrojans.com or UCLABros.com or UND.com, and today every school in the country's got a domain name associated with it in their athletic department, and it's as commercial as heck. But that was in the mid-90s. So what I wanted to talk about, the reason I chose this title is because there's so much going on right now in publishing that it is really transforming, I think, a lot of outside of technology. And I went through the PC revolution. I worked for the Olympics in 1984, and then there was the whole internet thing in the early 90s, and now you have this ebook thing, which I think is a bigger issue dealing with digital media. And so it's really interesting to compare those three sort of phases of what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years. And I think the reason why people are doing this is that it's really because of marketing, because of revenue, and for deal flow for these guys. And so the traditional publishing, what we're going to see in the next several years is, I think that's going to be, some people use the word atomized, it's going to be going out into functions within different businesses, and everyone will be a publisher. And so today you see people, instead of being the 6 or 7 largest publishers in the United States, you see people like Amazon or Samsung or Apple just competing with all these other major publishers on their own playing field. And so the center part of the whole business, as you probably know, is all either going away or changing. And so there's both risk and opportunity for everyone that's in the middle part, and everybody's trying to figure out where they fit in this. So what I wanted to do is just go through some of the high-level things of what's happening in the business, some of the more recent statistics, and where I think things are going trend-wise, what I've seen. And then I'm going to get into some more kind of case study fields to show some unique applications of ebooks, because we're probably all familiar with the ones that come out of trade publishing that you see that would be in what used to be the Barnes & Noble stores. And there's a lot of other interesting ways that people are using ebooks in order to do these three things, especially the marketing thing. And then I'm going to finish up with, I've got about 6 or so, what I think, to me, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that are really big issues that I see day in and day out when I work with my publishers or authors that are publishing. So we'll go through each one of those kind of key things. A lot of them have been in the news recently. So the first thing I just wanted to cover is just what is an ebook. And if you're in business-to-business marketing, an ebook is really a PDF. That's what you create for people, you send around. But I define an ebook as really something that is easy to sell in the ebook stores, as well as you don't have to do this business on your iPhone in order to read it, right? So if you get a PDF in your iPhone, you're kind of moving it around all the time. The other thing is that what's really changed in the last actually 12 months or so is this used to be a big deal, right? So in 2007, when the Kindle was released, the whole e-reader thing, people think, well, I read something last night, by a publisher in Australia having like a, they call it like a Kindle-free day or something, saying that the only way, they have a closed ecosystem with Amazon, and the only way that you can read a Kindle book is on a Kindle. And I can't believe I'm reading that in April of 2013, but you can read it on any of these devices. The other thing I think is interesting is that just looking at these numbers here of what's happened over the last 12 or 14 months, really since the e-readers were huge, and talking about 40, 50, 60 million of those a year, and all the avid readers buying those, and that's why you see such an impact on publishing. And then the tablets come out, and now people are buying tablets like crazy and doing a lot more things on that tablet besides reading. So their justification of spending that extra money is to be able to do something else like checking email or doing shopping. So I just saw these numbers this last week, and they were released that the first quarter of this year, maybe you saw this, that was 13.9%. PC shipments were down 13.9%, the lowest growth rate in, I think, since 1994, something like that, really way back with things. And so you look at the numbers here, and you see what's happening worldwide is that the mobile device is really having the biggest impact. And so on the developing countries, which most of on this list, you have the top 20 countries by the number of mobile phones. And so most of the countries on here are developing nations. And you see this with communications, that instead of being, putting in cable to some place, that is so much easier to put in a cell tower. So while there might be a very low telephone adoption rate in India 30, 20 years ago or so, now it's very high in terms of the connectivity because everybody has mobile phones. You just pop a tower in. Well, I think the same thing will happen with information, is that you're going to have this essentially marginal cost of zero to produce and manufacture and distribute. I mean, I can distribute it, an ebook file to all of you, whether it's Kindle or EPUB, and it costs zero to do that. The manufacturing is zero. So when you combine those two things together, I think it's going to be a really interesting time for information. If you look at Vietnam, they just reported they have 1% penetration in Vietnam on ebooks, because as soon as information is released, it all gets dropped onto a CD and it's handed out to people. The copyright is just totally ignored, and you kind of wonder how that's all going to be, how publishers are going to be able to make money going forward. And I think that'll be figured out, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I think this is a pretty significant look at what is going to happen with devices moving away from the e-ink screens, which is that traditional Kindle device, and to more of that mobile phone device where you're reading it on the small screen. And by the way, so when I use these terms, you know what EPUB is? People do, who e-reads? Who reads ebooks on a regular basis? Okay, so there's two file formats. There's Amazon's Kindle, which is technically 3, but people will use the term MOBI, M-O-B-I. So a MOBI file is what's called reflowable text, and that text can adapt itself to any screen size. So that's why on a PDF it's a pain in the neck to read, because it's not flowable, it's a fixed page. So on a EPUB file, an EPUB is from an independent standards organization that has defined what the coding is behind it. It's basically HTML. And so the EPUB is a competing format. And so everybody uses EPUB except Amazon. And because they can, I guess. But they bought a company, actually a French company, in like 2004, 2005. And so when they launched their reader, they thought, well, what the heck, we'll just publish this. It will own the market that way. I think it's like a game of hearts. They kind of got the queen right now, and they're trying to run the deck and get all the books for them. But both of those file formats will work on virtually any device except for the proprietary reader. So if I have a Kindle, I can't read an EPUB file. So an EPUB would be from Apple or Barnes & Noble, or Kobo is a big international player, and some of the other ones, and vice versa. So if I have a Nook, I can't read a Kindle file.
Well, I don't think that's completely accurate. because there are programs out there that can take an EPUB file, convert it to a format the Kindle will read, and send it to the Kindle,
Right.
and then you can read them. But
Exactly.
for as far as the actual purchasing,
Right, but the
they're
file
right
itself,
there.
you can't read that file on the device. So you go through Calibre, right? You can download a free software program if it's not copy protected, which you'd have to break separately, and you convert that file over to another file format in order to read it on your device that you would have. But I think this is going to become somewhat of a moot point because you have, a little bit of a moot point because people are using tablets. So on a tablet, on your iPad, you can have a Bluefire reader, which is an independent reader, and you can read the EPUB files. You could have the Kindle reader. You can have the Nook reader. You can have the iBooks reader from Apple. And these are all just like with a PDF file. With a PDF, you have to have a reader. We all know it's Adobe Acrobat, and they've put the basis of that out in the public domain. But the same thing is true of these other two file formats. Is they're not necessarily, they're the only ones in the public domain. But the point there is that there are two formats, and I think I took out my slide, and they're in a silo. You know, basically, you have to convert the files to go back and forth. Amazon has, depending on who's doing the calculating, somewhere around 60 to 80% of the market. In publishing, everything is kind of broken out, and I think when it comes to self-published works, you see the lion's share with Amazon. And that is, I think they probably have closer to 80% of the market. The authors that I talk to sell very little in any of the stores. Even ones that are Canadian don't sell that many because Canada's really big with a platform called Kobo. Any other questions? Just interrupt if you have questions about it. The reading revolution. So these numbers are pretty current. Is that this came out maybe in March or April. So looking at this is from the American, I think it's the American Bookseller Association or Association of American Publishers, maybe AP. The chain bookseller market, which really there's just one chain left, Barnes & Noble, is 19, down from 32%. The online market, which is mostly Amazon, you can see the changes that have taken place there. And then the ebook, the share of total purchase is 28%. It's actually, you look at the revenue numbers, and ebooks have, from a revenue perspective, have surpassed hardcover books. And they're about 50% of fiction. And where it works really well, where ebooks are great, is with narrative, anything that's long form. So if you have biographies, memoirs, fiction, all that kind of stuff, this is just, you're going to see it's going to be the new pulp fiction stuff, right? Everything is going to be going that direction, and they're trying to window some of these things, but I think they're out there competing with regular print books, and a lot of it is going to ebook. Where it doesn't work so well is with what you might call the coffee table books. That stuff is a little harder to program. It's more expensive to program. The assets are bigger, video, photographs and things. You don't really have that experience either. And when it comes to educational kinds of materials, it's very difficult with the user interface to kind of keep track of multiple places in the material that you're reading. So there's a number of studies that are going on right now. It's still very early days. Some of the studies at the academic level are looking at a book and saying, what's your recall when you look at a book versus when you look at an ebook. And so on a book, you could have this sort of spatial thing, and you remember, oh, there was this graph that was in the top right column, and I remember what it says. And so you don't really have that yet, and they haven't been able to find the advantages of the ebook in that same way. But that's just one example of the kinds of things that the research is starting to turn up now. And overall, it is a shrinkage problem. The shelves are going away. When Borders went out of business this last year, there was a little bit of uptick. So if you take that chunk of print book that was available, let's say, to the physical, to the local geography, if you will, that book, only a small percentage of it actually ended up staying at the local level. A lot of it moved online, and we know who gets that. Time, money, and attention are another thing. I think attention's interesting because, I'm going to talk about this in a second, that that people, even if a book is free, sometimes they don't download the book because they just don't have time to read it. And you've seen all these things. If you've been to the Washington Post site, they've got a little button now, and you know how the social media buttons are on the side, and you can tweet something or send it to your friends on Facebook, whatever. Now there's a little K button. And so you push the button and it links it up with your Kindle account, and it'll take that article and shoot it to your Kindle. So you don't have to sit there and read this at your desk or some other place. You find an interesting article, do the send to Kindle. It's called send to Kindle. And a lot of websites can implement this as well. So I think there's 5 trends that I've seen over the last 3 years or so. And kind of going down here, this whole notion of impulse buying is that, you know, you never saw people walk into Costco at a hardcover book and come out with, you know, an armload of these, and maybe they're going on a trip or something, but it's pretty rare, right? You have to think about that. Will I read this book I'm going to spend $22 on? And it's just not true on the ebook stuff. People they just grab it, $3, $4, $5, they take it. And because of that, you know, so they're collecting a lot more than what you would do normally. So it was interesting, I read today that there's a website called Digital World Today or something like that. And they have an index where they check best-selling books. And they measure what's selling well with ebooks and things. They're kind of across the board because it's all over the map. And you can't really look at the New York Times and the other ones. So the number 1 publisher, I think it was Hachette, was number 1. The number 2 was that new combined publisher. It's Random House and Penguin. When you put those 2 together, that was number 2 on this list. The number 3 position was self-published books. So if you take all the self-published books and treat them like a publisher, that collection was number 3, ahead of Simon & Schuster, ahead of HarperCollins, and some of the other ones that are there, right? There's 6 going down to 5 major publishers in the world. So that collection of self-publishers was number 3 on the best-selling list. And that's, I think, a big part of the reason is that the people are looking and much more open now to trying new things, 50 Shades of Grey, and other content like that. And so they just collect it. And what the other thing is they do is they what I call graze, is they'll open up a book and they may not like it, and they'll just move on to the next one, or they'll just look out a little bit. And so you're able to actually measure now. Barnes & Noble made some references to this in a conference at the last quarter of 2012, saying that, you know, they were looking and saying that people will, if you don't make it to that 100th page, you don't finish the book. They're reading, they actually know how fast somebody reads and what kind of a book it is, fiction or nonfiction, and what sort of characteristics certain books have. And so you can actually give that back to authors about how you actually write your book. And for any author, the whole goal is to be read. It doesn't do anything to give your book away even. I mean, it's great, at least it's there, but you got to get read. I mean, I collect a lot of stuff and I'll read it like a year or 2 years later and find, wow, that's a really good book. But this is something now where you can afford to graze because it was only $3 that you paid for it. Multi-format buying is the idea of you buy the ebook, you like it, but you want to share the print book with somebody. So you'll go online and buy the print book, or maybe you want it for your library, or maybe it's more of a reference type of thing. And so you've read it, you know, it'd be nice to get, maybe underline or whatever, so you buy that. And that's getting popular because so many people are moving into print on demand. So with print on demand, it's very easy. Prepare your manuscript as a PDF, upload it. You can actually do it for $0. If you got the skills, somebody's got a cover for you, it doesn't cost anything. And so you can upload it to CreateSpace or Lightning Source, and it costs, if you want to, you can use their ISBN number, or you can bring your own and pay for it. If you want to expand a distribution, you pay $25, but other than that, maybe you have to hire somebody to help you. I mean, I do this for people, but you could actually produce that book for free, a printed book for free. and you just pay for it when it's ordered, right? So 150 page book is maybe $2.50 for you to buy it. And then non-traditional books, that's what I'm gonna cover next. So I want to go through a few of these categories that I see out there, and I think they're kind of interesting from a case study perspective. So here's one. NBC launched the reason I put NBC in the title is they were the only major television television-oriented company that did not have an internal publisher. The other ones, CBS, HarperCollins, or maybe that's Fox, but Fox, CBS have theirs, ABC, Hyperion, I believe, with Disney. So they wanted to start an internal division called NBC Publishing. And they publish Grimm. So if you haven't seen Grimm, you might want to get the free ebook, and it gives you all the characters that are in the show so that you can learn more about them. It gives you the photographs, it gives you all the plot summaries, it really engages you as a fan. LA Noire, if you were gamers, you maybe saw this game came out about 18 months or so ago, and this was actually a painstakingly researched game where they went to Los Angeles in that whole noir period, in the 40s or so, and they created a game based upon that period of time, sort of the Raymond Chandler thing, and then went to a number of reputable, successful authors and said, could you write a short story in that style? And so they published this, and it's maybe a dozen or so books, a dozen or so short stories, and did this at the same time to put it up into Amazon. And in all these cases, I'll keep referring back to this, but Amazon is really like the Google for information products. And so if you want to find something, you're gonna might start there and look for it and use that as a search engine to surface other content. And that's exactly what Google is doing here with this last one. That's a new they have a new kind of internal division that they've started that's doing some interesting location-based type gaming projects, and they're publishing a book. They went to this author and they engaged him to write, I believe it's a couple of novels that go with this game, to have it come out simultaneously. And this has happened before. Halo had the same thing, but you try to wrap that, in other movies have too. Sometimes you come out after the movie's out. But they're doing it as kind of this multimedia type of endeavor. This one, yeah.
So are all those three free downloads? I know the LA Noire one was a free download when they came out with it. Or are they charged for those tie-in ebooks?
Well, that's the other thing about ebooks is that the price, you never know what the price is going to be. So all those, Grimm, at different times there was a charge, mostly free. Noir was free for part of the time, and then it was mostly a charge. And then they vary the prices on it as well. And so with ebooks, it's very easy to change the price up and down, move it around. I do that with some of my books as well. So here's an example that I think is really kind of interesting, that McKinsey does a lot of publishing of research. And I've seen this happen a couple of times now. So this is on the McKinsey website. So you get this report, Investing Growth, Europe's Next Challenge. You can get it for free. Really, as I said, the McKinsey customer is probably going to come over here, right? And they're going to get it free. But it's that sort of outlier that maybe is looking for some research information. Oh, look at this report. They wouldn't think to go over to the McKinsey website to look to see if that information is free. So they charge for it over here. One nice thing about it is if you buy it from Amazon, it's very easy to get it onto your device. So there is some sort of speed and whatnot, but that just kind of simplifies the process. The other way to use this is what I call reader convenience. And so if you go to MailChimp, if you're familiar with the big email marketing firm, they have like 30 different guides. Every single guide has this at the bottom. It's all free. And you can download the guide in any of those 3 file formats. You can also click on it and read it online. But they produce it like that because they know that people might want to carry it around or have it in their personal library on a device that's smaller or not printed out at all. And actually, if you want this, I created this one as well and put it on my site. This is the FTC released this, I think it was in March, or the first part of April, and it hadn't been updated in probably 10 years. And so that's the disclosure that all of us have to follow when we're advertising things online. So if you see celebrity tweets that come out that are sponsored, but they don't say they're sponsored, they're paid to promote something, and they say, hey, buy this thing, they need to be disclosing that they are paid to do that. And so this report has a lot of examples and information about proximity, where you need to how you have to promote how you have to explain or disclose what it is that you're promoting. So that's free. And you just download the file, download it on your device. And then you have Hot Market products. So Hot Market is, we catch Bin Laden and then you get a book, a few days later type of thing, right? There's a lot of different ways to look at Hot Market. So Bubba wins, you got a book that comes out. Politico has a deal that they published with one of the big publishers, I believe. And so you see their branding is here. This is just all of that's a whole series of Politico books where mostly it's newspapers. So if you've been following something, you've got a lot of content already, and now you find the big news organizations in particular taking that information and reshaping it and turning it into a book form. Just makes it a little bit more convenient for people to read. Which brings me to this one. And this, when Mountain Lion was released, and I think it was released in 2011, was the operating system of this particular upgrade for Apple. And that came out, this reviewer is very well known on Ars Technica. And when he posts a review, it's like everybody reads this because they won't buy the operating system until they read this guy's review. I mean, he's really well respected. And so what they did is they published it on the web for free. It was like 24 pages, covered with ads, of course. Probably took a long time to download. And then at the same time, they released a Kindle ebook. So in 24 hours, they made $15,000 at $2.99 a piece, because people didn't want to. I think it was 1,500 copies. It was a lot of copies. People didn't want to sit there and read this thing on the website. They would rather download the ebook for that. So that was a very interesting. They just was a 24-hour period, $15,000, and so now they do that with their releasing other major review types of things.
Blocks.
68 Blocks was a investigative journalism program that the Boston Globe did, and they embedded reporters in a very tough area of Boston to try to analyze why, report on and say what's going on in this neighborhood. And they really put together a lot of content with video, expertly done, by the way, and then released it as an ebook behind their paywall. So it really kind of served as a subscriber benefit and also a way to leverage that reporting that they did for probably about 6 months. So it's available on all three major platforms, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and Amazon.
Are there any books that are exclusively only available as ebooks?
Are they available?
Are they making certain content, like certain books, only exclusively available as ebooks rather than hard print copy?
You're seeing that, yeah. Yeah, there's some of them, and it's surprising when you watch some of the television programs too, and they do these interviews with authors that are doing the book tours, and they go out there and they say, well, you just released an ebook. I can't remember who it was. I was watching one of the news shows, and that had been Colbert or something, but there's nothing really to hold up, right? And they came out with just an ebook first. Why they didn't do a print on demand, I don't know. But yeah, there are books that are coming out just on that. And sometimes it really only works well for the material that way, depending on what they've done. I guess there was a book that Al Gore wrote, and then they turned that into a multimedia version of that maybe he had the book first, I guess. that was a huge success for that particular ebook because of the level of programming that went into some of the animations and other things that were in it. In fact, the guys that started that ended up getting hired by Facebook. So I wanted to go through about a half a dozen. I call it coffee talk now because I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to throw these out and we can talk about them in more general terms. If you guys, I have a few comments and some of the hot topics, but you may know more about some of these things than I do. And I just, from my world, I can tell you that, you know, some of the stuff is a really big deal. And this is one, as you're probably aware, that just happened about a month ago. Is everybody familiar with this case? Sort of? No? So this guy was buying books. He was a USC graduate and he was buying books in the Philippines, I believe, and then bringing them back here and selling them, you know. And so went up to the appellate court and he lost and had to give up his golf clubs and computer and things and then took it to the Supreme Court. But if you look at some of the facts on it, is the publishers were pretty upset about that, but they have a lot of tools. They can do some things that I think can really mess with this process and make that an unrealistic thing going forward. So you can, you know, if you turn it in, some of the information into more of a license, then that falls outside of this, right? Outside of First Doctrine. So they're talking about doing that is making it more localized, not just not distributing it, and then moving more, like I say, to more licensing restrictions and other kind of local features. So that's, I think, a pretty important one.